Hello, Phantom fans. My name is Sam Olmstead. His name is Justin Irwin, and welcome to this special episode of the Dump and Chase podcast. This episode is brought to you by the fine folks at Advanced Podiatry. For services and treatments offered, office locations, and appointment information, check out advancedpodiatry.com. So thank you for everyone for tuning in, whether it's on Western Reserve Radio, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. So while this is an episode we have wanted to do, Justin, you have been dreading this one.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a fan of going back and listening to my own work.
Well, you're not a fan of going back and listening to yourself, period. I do the audio editing, so I don't have a choice. I'm used to it by now. I can flip that switch to where I don't think I'm listening to myself. I'm listening to someone else. Yeah, this is probably going to be way more torture for you than it will be for me.
Okay, well, yeah, let's just rip the Band-Aid off here.
Yeah, so what we are doing, we are going all the way back to our first episode number 1, that came out on March 29th, 2019. I'd say about a week after we released this episode. So at the very beginning of April 2019 is the last time I heard this episode.
Yeah, I'm probably the same. Within the first week, I don't go back and listen to anything. I might have played clips of it for people, but yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be go back listening to that. We'll be pausing it, jumping in here and there with any pertinent information or just eternal dread for what we did back then.
Yeah.
It'll be a little disjointed. We didn't really have segments back then. We just rambled on. So
I believe the phrase that the kids use these days is cringeworthy.
Yes. So so for your benefit, we're going to embarrass ourselves here. Go all the way back to episode 1. Yeah. So this was something we worked on for a couple months, getting ready. Got some really cheap equipment put together to be able to record because we had no idea how we were going to do it. Although we figured out how to record remotely before everyone else did when the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
We had already been doing remote recording for podcasts like almost a year before the pandemic hit, and everybody else had to figure out how to do it. So really did not affect us at all. Once the pandemic hit, we were already pretty much locked in doing it this way.
No, in fact, I mean, yeah, I kind of looked at Zoom and said, well, it's got potential, but there's already better ways to do things. But yeah, we eventually had to move to Zoom.
And yeah, the only thing is, and I kind of regret it in a way, there is something that would be worse than this. And I know you remember it. The only problem is I cannot find it anywhere. That was the 5 minutes of test audio that we did.
Oh.
Yeah, because we were basically talking to each other over a phone call and recording everything. We wanted to test out the equipment. So we just did like a little 5 minute, just kind of little sample just to test all the equipment out, test that, see how everything would work. And apparently that's just been lost to the dustbin of time because I can't find it.
That might be for the best. That might be incriminating.
Yeah. All right. So, as much as I'd love to find it, I don't think it's ever going to happen. But I mean, I have the hard drive. I thought it was saved on, unless I deleted it. But unless I kind of do some forensic dumpster diving there, I think it may be gone for good. But
I mean, I'll send you some tools later.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. Like I said, it'll be playing, and at various points we may, we'll pause and kind of give our thoughts or blah, 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 or whatever. May even give, any players that we mentioned, we might stop and give updates on where they are 3 years later. We're set up for that as well. So, other than that, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it with the audio. Wow, the old intro.
Starting at the beginning of the song, and yeah.
And I'm playing this off of YouTube,
Hello,
so this is...
Phantoms fans. Welcome to the Dump and Chase podcast. I'm Sam Olmstead.
And I'm Justin Irwin.
All right, so
Let's
right away... That was before I remixed the music to kind of make it a little more lively at the beginning. That was more of like the funeral march intro. I forgot we did that voiceover.
Yeah.
I remember the microphone I had, there was really bad echo in this room. And so I had to hide in a closet with the microphone to record that.
I don't have a closet here to hide in.
Yeah.
My room acoustics are my worst nightmare here. And yeah.
All right. So
I got one of those wraparound. I've eventually moved to one of those, isolation screens.
Yeah.
Not much help.
All right. So continuing on.
And here we go. Welcome to episode 1 of the Dump and Chase podcast. I am not to be used with that movie starring Sean Penn. And with me is the founder, the writer, the videographer for hockeyfan.com, Justin. Justin, are you ready for this?
I am ready.
All right, so just a quick...
So probably the
we weren't.
So probably the least energy I've ever had doing this show, and that was probably the most energy you ever have, and it's just been downhill ever since.
We're all like deer in headlights.
Wow, I was very low energy right there. All right, continuing on.
Little background on the two of us. Justin, you have been a season ticket holder for how many years now?
7.
7 years. This is finishing up my 3rd season as a season ticket holder. Now we both are hunkered down front of Section 222. How is it usually describe yourself if you're telling someone to seek you out?
Tall, skinny, white guy, usually holding a cell phone recording the game.
Bald. You forgot to mention bald.
Well, I usually have a hat on, unless somebody is...
Well, see, now that's how I have to tell people how to find me, to look for the reflection in the back of your head. There I am.
Ah, okay. Well, yes, I am usually pretty clean-shaven.
Make it easy on everyone else. Just real quick.
Boy, we weren't struggling for dialogue at all, were we?
I don't think we were doing run sheets at that time, were we?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, there was there was a run sheet for the first episode. Oh, I don't think I was keeping notes yet, so and hadn't quite I won't say mastered, but got better at the art of winging it.
Okay, whose line is it anyway?
Yeah.
What made you want to do hockeyfan.com? The recaps, the previews, all that kind of stuff, keeping tabs on him.
Back at that, there wasn't a whole lot of press about the Phantoms. I had seen similar things done for other teams. I figured we just needed somebody with an impartial view, tell you the good and the bad sometimes. So I just went with it.
Okay, so jumping into this here, we're going to...
And quickly, I will point out that since that time, nothing has changed.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a part-time thing. Sometimes I don't make it to the end of the season. Some issues this year. I would like to point out for our buddies in Lincoln, when I mentioned, well, I'd seen things done for other teams, Yeti in Lincoln, we still miss his blog.
No, I'm just saying like coverage of the team or coverage of the league in general. Not much has changed in 3 years.
Oh, no, it never will. No.
Up from the beginning of the season to where we are now. The start of the season, the same story as the last two. Complete goalie turnover. We finished last year with Ivan Prosvatev and Wilder Peters. They both moved on to greener pastures. We start the season with John Moore and Justin Evanson, and safe to say that did not work out too well.
That is very safe to say. There wasn't a whole lot of competition between, it seems, and that just kind of led to complacency in the net, and it wasn't getting the job done.
Another big story of the offseason was the return of Brett Murray. Brett Murray was with the team about 2 seasons ago, played about half the year, and right about the Christmas break, he left, took off to Penn State. Safe to say, Penn State didn't work out for him at all. Now, Brett Murray is a 4th-round draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres in 2016, but at Penn State, over the course of 33 seasons, 1 goal, 6 assists. So extremely safe to say that just Penn State was not agreeing with him much. Came back to the...
Now, I will bring up at this point, because this was 3 years ago, Brett Murray has in fact made his debut, for anybody that doesn't know, with the Buffalo Sabres since then. He came up the end of last season for a couple games. He kind of split his time between Buffalo and Rochester this past season. But yeah, we'll just point out he has in fact made his debut since this with the Buffalo Sabres. Also, Brett was not a big fan of ours, and if I remember correctly, that'll be coming up later in the episode why.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
HL came back to the Phantom. What did you think about that as far as what happened to him at Penn State?
Yeah, he just did not mature at Penn State. Performance was pretty much unnoticeable, and I guess he decided to come back to the USHL. Well, he found another university, Miami of Ohio, that would probably be better suited for him.
For his sake, I would hope so. I mean, as talented a player as he is.
I hope for their sake he does do better there than at
absolutely.
Penn State.
Okay, so the season starts off horribly. Phantom started the season, first 6 games, 0-5-0-1. Just nothing went right that first probably month of the season or so. In terms of the start to previous seasons, where would you rank the beginning of this season?
It is the worst start that we've had. I had the number, but yeah, it was by far our worst Even worse than 2013-2014, which is amongst the worst hockey I've ever seen at this level, or maybe any level. This year...
Speaking of things that haven't changed in the past few years...
Well, we do have a new worst, yeah. I don't know, at the beginning of this season, maybe or the beginning of last season, I mean, I might not have been exactly as bleak as that, but, well...
Well, let's see. This past season, the Phantoms started out, if it loads here, the Phantoms started out this past season 2-6-0-1. That was how their pretty much month of October went. Yeah, not much has changed there in 3 years either. So
I blame it to the lack of serious preseason competition.
Yeah. All right, so moving on.
At least we managed not continue to play at that level the whole season.
Yeah, that October overall was really rough. If it wasn't for us catching Dubuque early in the season, I think we would have came out of October completely winless. Another story early on in the season, which certainly didn't help, defensive injuries, Steve Holtz, Aiden Gallagher. I mean, how much
some things have
those
changed.
two being out of the lineup for as long as they were? I mean, to you, how much did that impact the defensive lineup?
Holtz is a returning defenseman coming back from last year. Guys like that are extremely important early in the season. Holtz is defensive defenseman. We had a guy, Gianfranco Casaro, who's more of an offensive guy. So losing Holtz early in the season like that was pretty big. And having Aiden Gallagher out as well, kind of cut into the depth of position.
Now,
Well, so right there, with Aiden Gallagher, ended up being a future Phantoms team captain. Steve Holtz is a person I have not thought of in a while.
Yeah. I'm having failures on elite prospects right now. I was going to look him up, but, well, yeah.
Let's see.
I met his dad a couple of times. Really good family.
Let's see. Steve Holtz, he just finished up his second season with the University of Michigan. If you can call it that, 5 points in 11 games this past season.
I've seen worse.
Yeah. All right, so that'll be a good, we'll call that a good spot to take our first break here. So when we come back, we'll continue along with our look back at episode 1. You're listening to the Dump and Chase podcast right here on Western Reserve Radio.
Miss an episode of By All Means, and you could miss a lot.
I have the sound up, and I appreciate the guys that do the work now. But it is with great appreciation I see what the guys do, not only the announcers, but also the players. So we've had wonderful playoffs. I mean, single, double, triple overtime games. It's been fantastic.
By All Means, Tuesdays at 5, right here on Western Reserve Radio and streaming live on westernreserveradio.com.
And welcome back to the Dump and Chase podcast, brought to you by Advanced Podiatry. So we will be continuing along here with our re-listen of episode number 1 that came out March 29, 2019. So we're just going to pick it up right where we left off.
Did we start the season with a complete overhaul of the goalie position? It kind of led into, due to the play of Moore, Evanson really didn't even play that much to start the season. We went into a game of goalie musical chairs almost. To start with, they brought in Christian Stover in a trade from Cedar Rapids. Now, you kind of classified this as a goalie dump on the part of Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, they had a goalie really doing well. Stover is expected to go to college next year, so they wanted to bring a younger goalie into the system, so they made a quick trade with the Phantoms, and I think both teams benefited from that.
So Lord Stover, there's another name that hasn't come up in a little while. Most definitely did not go to college the next season.
No. He went to college finally this season.
Yeah, he bounced around there a little. He was with Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, and then he was with us, and then back to Des Moines, Madison, Muskegon, Sioux Falls. Finally got his first season at Bowling Green this past year. And then when he was with Madison, when he was given sainthood, was it Madison or Muskegon? One of the two.
I'm pretty sure it was Madison where, yes, he was anointed.
Yes, the breakaway that he stopped against Youngstown Oh, Lord, what was, I know we went through this a long time ago. What was the line? The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, and tonight the Lord's name is Stover.
Yeah.
Mike Lang, eat your heart out.
Yeah, I'm still, to this day, have never heard a call quite like that.
Yeah. All right, so continuing on.
Vinny Purpura was brought in a trade with Omaha. So then we ended up with this kind of strange 3-goalie rotation. I seem to remember a 3-game series with Chicago where like each night it was 2 different goaltenders in the lineup.
I think they were just trying to stir the pot, see if either Stover or Moore were going to respond to a veteran being brought in. I think they knew Purpura was not going to stick around. So it was just basically to see how these guys would react with a little bit more competition.
Now, at the end of the day, Purpura was not even with the team that long. He ended up taking off to Boston University. And then, if I remember correctly, it was not long after that when John Moore was traded to Omaha.
That seems about the timeline, yeah.
And then the final piece of this goalie puzzle was Chad Veltri, who had been dropped by Sioux Falls. We picked up on waivers. At that point, you kind of had a back and forth between Chad Veltri and Ashton Stover, with neither one really kind of separating themselves from the other until more recent. As far as the way the season has gone, how big do you think the pickup of Chad Veltri was?
At this,
wait a minute, did we have waivers in the league before?
Yes.
I don't think I've ever. I don't even remember bringing it up then. I don't remember bringing it up since.
We've picked up a couple of guys who've been waived in from other leagues. But Chad Veltri was dropped. He was a free agent. Yeah, they put him on waivers. We claimed him. I forget where he was going to end up in the Null. And I can remember publicly on a certain message board somewhere saying, I really think Youngstown should pick this kid up. And I was right.
Lord, I hope at that period of time that the hockey personnel group was not getting advice from message boards. On roster decisions, I really hope not.
No, it was I think it was a really logical choice at the time. He was from Fox Chapel, so kind of a more local kid. Had played good at times. So, and I remember we really, really, really kind of needed somebody at that point.
Ooh, I don't think I've uttered that word since. That kind of blew my mind there.
Before that, like you said, there was no real clear-cut number one goaltender. I think even Christian Stover has picked his game up since Veltri has come in and given him a little bit of competition for that number one spot. So I think in the long run that even if Veltri isn't the number one goalie going down the stretch, which it looks like he is, still has done its job.
He was.
And then at the time we traded for Purpura, there was also another trade at the same time with Chicago. Not a goaltender, and on name value alone, not what you thought in the beginning, but that was the acquisition of Matthew Barnaby Jr., which...
Barnaby!
He said it, not me.
Kyrie, if you're listening, I apologize, but there's still a little bit of PTSD from that one. That was for a joke of one there. That was meant for one person only. We'll move on here.
You hear that name and it conjures images that once you saw Barnaby Jr. play didn't really line up with what you saw from his father in his time in the NHL.
No, and that is probably for the best.
Yeah.
I loved watching his dad play, but it was more for theatrical value, and I don't think that's something we really need today.
Which is also something you don't really see in the game anymore anyways.
You'll occasionally have a guy, but in this day and age, you need the skill to back it up.
Yeah. Now, after the Phantoms had played about a third of the season, a pattern started to form with the team. As goes Brett Murray, does go the first 18 games of the season looked horrible for the Phantoms. Brett Murray in those first 18 games, only 6 goals. The next 14 games, 14 goals. And at the same time, the Phantoms offense seemingly altogether kind of picked it up. Just a complete turnaround, kind of hiding the deficiencies of the play of the goalies at the time. kind of letting the team get away with that. What did you see? I mean, Brett Murray at the beginning of the season compared to kind of that turnaround the third of the way through.
Beginning of the he kind of looked like a stumbling the ice.
There it is.
Now he seems to be a lot more confident. Seems to have the USHL game back. Not wearing a face cage. He is the immovable object that we expect him.
And that's a thing right there. I mean, how many...
Well, you made the comment at some point in time, depending on when this comes out, about Winter Wallace, us having to beat the Western Conference out of him.
Yes.
Yeah, we had to beat the NCAA out of Brett Murray. And, I'm... maybe have made some comments there that were misconstrued as saying that he was ungraceful on the ice. He is a competent skater, I guess. But he needed to relearn his strengths.
Yeah.
And his strength was parking himself in front of the net, being a big boy. I make, again, the comparison to Winter Wallace. You have to play to your strength, not to what people want to make of you.
Yeah, and this was, we released this episode a couple days later. We were at the season ticket information meeting for the next year. All the players were there, and Brad Patterson had made some comment about kids on the team that were Canadian, and you heard a moose noise. And then later on, we're kind of standing around in a group chatting, and Brett Murray had his hands up to doing the moose ear thing with his hands, and was barreling into other teammates who had been standing around. So that was, we were most definitely sure he had heard the episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, barreling around into people, yeah, just instead of making moose ears, keep your stick on the ice. And looking at his stats, I think he's done that. So
yeah, it kind of makes me glad that right away when we started doing this, we weren't interviewing players, because I'm not sure how that would have gone for us. But okay, moving on here.
Times if somebody knock him off his...
Less times than I saw him trip over them at the beginning.
Now, when you make the reference to the stumbling moose, you're not just saying that because he's Canadian.
No, that is not a...
that would be racist
stereotype.
No, I don't want to get complaints. I know they'll be very politely written.
Ooh, that was some
I don't know about that.
That was some gentle humor right there.
First, I want to make sure you get the credit on that. Was the 3M line, which was Murray, Malone, and McEachran. As for people that don't know, McEachran is not the son of former NHL player Sean McEachran, different spelling of the last name. I've heard that so many times, I just want to correct it now. But, I mean, they went through a couple different versions of it. You would see Abate centering the line before they, bumped him down to second and third line play, which seemed to suit him just fine. And then kind of the place that the 3M line really shined was on the power play. To you, what is it about the 3M line, the three of them working together, that once it clicked, just kind of took over the league?
Balance. You got Murray is big, park in front of the net, maybe not the greatest hands, but good enough. Jack Malone really started to shine, strong, he's fast. And McEachran has a great shot, really dangerous from anywhere on the ice, sharp angle, accurate from the point, so really a good balance.
Now, what was it?
All right, so we'll go ahead and take another little break here. Jack Malone moved on to college the next season, and then was kind of a surprise and came back to Youngstown. It was a very welcome surprise.
Definitely. Great parents have spoken to at least his mom a couple of times. Just really a great player on the ice, off the ice, and doing quite well. So
let's take another break. On the other side, we'll cringe along to another portion of episode 1. So stick around right here on Western Reserve Radio.
Advanced Podiatry has been making happy feet in the Mahoning Valley for 35 years. Our offices are located in Cortland, Champion, Austintown, Columbiana, and Howland. Our Howland office has relocated to 8601 East Market Street in Howland Corners. Advanced Podiatry offers sports medicine and treatment plans for all ages. You can also request an appointment online by visiting our website at advancedpodiatry.com. Advanced Podiatry, where surgery is always a last resort.
And we're back with Justin and myself here on the Dump and Chase podcast, brought to you by Advanced Podiatry. So we're just going to keep trucking right along here with episode 1 from 3 years ago.
About the Phantom's power play that you saw from the beginning of this and compared to later on in this. To me, it seemed like it was a lot of dump the puck into the zone, but only send maybe 1 or 2 guys after it, leaving everyone else at the blue line just kind of hanging out. I mean, do you think them getting more aggressive on the power play, I mean, was that the biggest key to you to kind of turning it around?
Definitely.
Somebody joked with us in the beginning, did we name the show the Dump and Chase podcast because we named it after their power play? And we said, no, if we did that, we would have named it the Dump and Stand There and Watch.
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, things are different, but still the same.
Yeah.
The biggest key. I also think their passing's become a lot more purposeful.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just throwing the puck around, but yeah, getting in and getting on the puck. Definitely an improvement over dumping it in and hoping that they turn it over.
Now, something in that is Matthew Barnaby. I had said to you before, especially last year, we really did not have somebody who could carry the puck through the neutral zone, consistently, reliably carry it through the neutral zone. That was something we lacked last year. That was something we had with Alec Mahalik a couple years ago. I mean, Matthew Barnaby, I mean, he doesn't show up on the stat sheet all the time,
Definitely.
but it just seems to be the little things that he does, the fact that he will not give up on plays no matter what. And again, going back to the comparison of his father, I mean, what was that like for you, kind of seeing that in his game when you kind of have this idea in your head of what
we
a
didn't
Barnaby
beat this
should be
horse
on
to
the
death
ice?
at all, did we?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was kind of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I've noticed distribute the puck very well. He is definitely not afraid to himself. So
now Barnaby, I think, is someone who, you know, you have the goal scorer, you have the primary assist, you have the secondary. Something tells me that if you kept the stat for like the third assist, you would see Barnaby's name all over that for the bulk of the time he's been with the Phantom.
Yeah, again, he distributes the puck very well. He will hit the
NBA
guy
fans
coming
are
into
laughing
the
at
zone.
us.
You know, that might
Lord.
be a dump around after that gets touched, the chip out of the zone. So really able to move the puck through all three.
Nah. There's some hockey purists that aren't the biggest fan of the secondary assist, so me suggesting a third assist, I'm pretty sure Don Cherry's head just exploded, and he didn't even hear this. That's how egregious of an idea I just had.
Well, thank
right
God
there.
I realized
Yeah,
it back
and
then.
in the meantime, I hear the NBA announcer talking about the hockey that's, you know, not credited, but, you know, that guy made the play.
Yeah, whatever will make Don Cherry's head explode, I'm all for. Now, of course,
still
along with
agree with
everything
that.
going on with this turnaround, the goalie position finally, I guess you could say, settled down. They kind of, dug in with Stover and Veltri. Again, kind of back and forth evenly, reached a point where Veltri kind of just completely took over. Over the 2 weekends, where it was, 3 shutouts in 4 games, kind of cemented his spot as the number 1 goalie. Along with the way the Phantoms' offense is playing, I mean, how was that, for Veltri to step up and get to where he is now?
Just a quick shout out to Jacob Fowler. If you want goals to attain to, 3 shutouts over 2 weekends. So something for next season. Just real quick to little motivation.
Yeah, well, Chad Veltri was an overager, so wasn't he?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Huge lift, especially with us trying to chase down playoff position. They had both had good games before that. They had both had not so good. So with him kind of reaching his stride here as we're trying to knuckle down on the playoffs, that really helps stabilize the rest of the team and not, put so much pressure on the rest of the team to produce when maybe things aren't going that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, with all the issues with injuries to the defense over the season, we finally reached a point. Guys started getting healthy, with the exception of Steve Holtz. Guys who were not thought to be top defensemen at the beginning of the season having to step up their game. Are there any of the defensemen that really stand out to you as far as really kind of taking the baton and running with it with all the injuries?
Well, since been back from injury, Aiden Gallagher really impressed me. The past
Man, I used to really care about what your opinion was.
Game, making a lot of really, really good plays in his own end. I think Nikolai Jensen really kind of stepped his game up. Jason Dobé has played pretty decent down the stretch.
Wow, there's a name I haven't thought of in a while.
Dobé,
picked their game up.
Okay, so now that we've gone back to the future, we're going to bring it up to the present day. And, of course, the big story right now is over the last 10 games, the Youngstown Phantoms being the best team in the United States Hockey League. The last 10 games, Phantoms 9-0-0-1. That's out of 20 possible points.
Oh, do I miss those
days?
In
the last 10 games, we picked up 19 of those. I mean, as far as moving up the standings, absolutely huge for the team. Clinched a playoff spot. And kind of in a three-way battle right now with Chicago and Cedar Rapids. How do you see that going, given the team schedules the rest of the...
Too close to call. Chicago and Cedar Rapids, they have some tough games ahead of them, but we have 3 games against USA under 18 team, which is absolutely destroying teams right now. And a pair of games against Sioux Falls, who they're doing really well right now.
Wow, a Western Conference team.
And a couple of games against the under-17 USA squad, which should be
Sioux
a lot
Falls.
easier.
I think that was Chad Veltry's former team, too.
Make mistakes, be goaded into mistakes against them, and we'll see how these...
Huh.
Well...
Not 9-0-1 in 10 games, and the last couple seasons we've gotten excited over 3 and... I think 1 4-game winning streak.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember things being pretty kind of bleak at times before that. So
yeah.
I think it all washes out. Maybe not as bad as last season, but there were still some problems, and Western Conference teams though that's a kind of a throws a twist into it.
Yeah. Okay, so there's not much left in this episode. We're coming down to the end. So after another break, we'll finish this debut episode off. Hang in there, Justin. We're almost done. And for the rest of you, stay tuned right here on Western Reserve Radio. Have you ever played golf?
No, you should see me on the driving range. It's scary.
I haven't played in a few years, but I think the last time I played, I shot like an 83.
On 9 or 18?
On 9.
Still not bad compared to me.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been 80, but the windmill kept getting in the way.
Podcast every...
And we're back right here on the Dump and Chase podcast, brought to you by Advanced Podiatry. So we're coming down about 5.5 minutes left in this episode, so why don't we just go ahead and put this out of its misery now.
The U18s had with Green Bay, that was, 12 goals they scored in both games?
Yes. Yeah, they beat...
You would think they would have been better off with one of those vinyl goalies that you Velcro to the goalpost. I think that may have done a better job than the Gamblers' goaltending in that series.
Yeah, well, I remember a game up in Plymouth we were a goal behind them, and late in the second, by the end of the game, we lost 11-3, I believe. So they are one of the best teams I have ever seen come out of the National Developmental Program. They're scary.
Well, the silver lining for us would be that we'll see the U18s over this weekend, and that will be the last we see of them. With Team USA making the playoffs, if I remember correctly, it will be the U17s that will go on to the playoffs, as the U18s will be moving on to Worlds. So it's kind of that you want to get through this next weekend with them, and then thankfully with the playoffs coming, that's something we won't have to worry about.
Exactly. If we do lose, you hope you have a short memory and be ready for Sioux Falls. If you manage to steal a couple of wins, that's a huge boost.
As far as this week is concerned, at the time of this recording, the school day game on Wednesday morning is yet to be played, so we don't know how that ended up. And then 2 games in Plymouth on Friday and Saturday, which you will be attending.
Yeah. So that was just a problem for us from day one of doing this show. Those midweek games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always been a problem, period. We don't win a lot of those.
No, we don't. Well, hey, we won the school day game this past season. So,
yeah. Well, we played against a U18 team that didn't have Jack Hughes on it.
Yeah, that's true. So. Oh, they're talking about them scoring 12 goals over a weekend. That seems a little low because I think they were putting up like 22, 23 goals in a weekend this past season. So
yeah, well, different circumstance. I still think the 18-19 U18s is going to measure up as one of the better teams historically. So yeah, whatever.
Drive up there, and then they'll be back home Sunday to play again in Youngstown. I would like to know who was smoking what when they made up this schedule, because that's a little bit of a doozy right there.
Yeah, well, this seems to be a pattern. And others, he play a slew of games against USA towards the end of the season. There for several years, we started off the season against USA 3 or 4 consecutive seasons. That was disaster for us. So I guess if you're going to have to wrap the season up, at least it's short travel for both teams.
Now, on the injury front, which has kind of bitten the fan.
Or no travel for the U18s, because for anybody who remembers their Phantoms history, it was not the U18s that came down to Youngstown that Saturday.
Yeah, that maybe we should do a re-listen of that game. Or
I think that was episode 2, the whole USA debacle.
No, I think it was 3 or 4. I think we had like 1 or 2 before that, and then we called that one Manna from Heaven because it wrote itself. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that game. I made that trip up worth every minute.
Yeah.
All season long. I think it's safe to say, for the most part, the Phantoms are pretty healthy right now. The biggest story injury-wise would be Joey Abate. Haven't seen him back yet. What are you seeing on that front?
To the best of my knowledge, upper body. I do not think he'll be back for the regular. It's possible to see him in the playoffs. Maybe not. Kind of a big loss for the Phantoms, kind of a solid second or third line center, depending on what consider a second or third line. Definitely his line with Kuntar and Barnaby was effective at getting under opposing skin, and Joey Abate was definitely one of those guys who gets under people's skin.
But at the same time, they were scoring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were definitely scoring. Good chemistry with those guys. It's kind of interesting to see Matthew Barnaby Jr. not be the most abrasive guy on the line, and they added good scoring depth, so you couldn't really write them off just out there to make you take a penalty.
And just a public service announcement to Matthew Barnaby Jr., this will be the last time that we reference the comparisons of yours and your father's game.
Yeah, when I write...
oh, that was a lie.
Because I don't even put the junior in there because he is such a different... Not, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so... That is episode 1 in the books. We're going to wrap this up. Our next episode, definitely you'll be getting a recap of how this weekend went, how our playoff standings are looking, where we are there, of course, fighting for that number 2 seed, get that bye in the first round. Now, if anybody out there wants to get a hold of us, Justin, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
On Facebook, YT Hockey Fan, YT Hockey HAN, and Twitter at YT Hockey Fan, again THAN. Game Time, Section 222, Row A.
And if you want to get a hold of me, I'm not giving you my Facebook. I don't even use it anymore. You can look me up on Twitter at Dad3SRO.
Oh, nope,
if you want to look through my timeline, there's really not much to it. Just me sharing things to win free stuff. That's pretty much what I do. I'm a reader more than anything. But again, thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back next week for another episode of Dump and Chase.
Oh, putting
Justin,
the music bed
under. Anything you want to add here at the end? Man, a few words. I like it. All right, thank you everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Can't remember if that's an L cut or a J cut.
Well, that saves me from having to give away the social media at the end of this episode, but
yeah.
Although my Twitter handle has changed since then. It's no longer the Dad3SRO. At @dump_chase pod. I'll just get that out of the way now. All right, so we'll take one more break, and when we come back, we'll give our final thoughts looking back on this episode. You're listening to the Dump and Chase podcast right here on Western Reserve Radio. And we're back here with the Dump and Chase podcast, brought to you by Advanced Podiatry. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this special episode. I won't say that episode 1 was awful.
I don't think it was our worst.
We had a long way to go.
I mean, we've done better. We've definitely done better. But again, not our worst.
Not our worst, but just kind of amazing when you listen to that and realize how far we've come now with Western Reserve Radio and actually being able to talk to players and coaches and
sponsors, and wow.
Being able to interview people that you can coherently hear when they're talking. That took a little bit of work to get that sorted out.
Yeah, well, technology kind of grew into it.
Yeah.
Due to circumstances.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that was just, well, beyond just how awful we sound. I mean, at least for me, because I always just watched hockey as your, bread and butter fan. When I met you and started talking to you, to be able to talk to you about hockey, I had to learn how to look at it much more analytically than I was used to my entire life.
Well, I feel honored to have at least made some sort of a difference there. Yeah, I mean, now you're plugging stats into spreadsheets.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. Yeah.
But just sitting there in the beginning, just being able to say, well, that guy sucks. It just was not really sufficient conversation for you for talking about a game. So I had to learn to look at it much more analytically and, breaking plays and players down. And
I mean, now we're talking to, people like Andrew Goldman, Deskins. I mean, people who sit there and make you really have to have to think.
Those are my come back down to earth moments. If I start to get any bit like, hey, I kind of think I know what I'm doing. We talk to those guys and it's like, I've got so far to go.
Yeah.
But
that's something with this sport. There's, I think, always something to learn, always some new aspect that you've never realized. And I think at this level, the USHL, it's kind of the perfect transition. You go from being a casual fan to really being able to break down the game. I mean, you kind of see the development, and it helps you really kind of appreciate, what you're seeing at higher levels, at lower levels. So, I think that's why we're here.
And you could hear it a lot in that episode. I made the joke earlier about asking for your opinion, but you could really kind of see it early on that you were my crutch because I wasn't able to form like an analytical opinion about lines on the ice. And I just kind of kept throwing it to you to cover up for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then you start learning the little tricks. I mean, it's not like what I'm doing is really that special. There's, resources you look at, and you just have to, know where to look. And thank God for guys like, Matt Lipsack, we get consistent line charts, things like that. That helps, any bits of information we can get. I guess now we're starting to get a lot more, we have credentials. So
there was a couple points I really hated myself listening to that, but all in all, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No, I think that's kind of why we clicked right off the bat, was you at least had the eye for it.
Yeah. So with all that, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you everyone again for tuning in. Of course, we want to thank our sponsors, Advanced Podiatry. To all of you again, thank you for tuning in, whether you're listening on Western Reserve Radio on YouTube or whatever service you prefer to listen to your podcast, your favorite podcasts.
You now have a choice.
Yeah. That's that. In the beginning, it was just YouTube. We have like overwhelmed people with choices. There's maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. I don't know. The numbers haven't come in yet. Yeah. Throughout the rest of this off season, I won't say when we're recording this episode. It wasn't long after the season ended, but we actually don't know when this episode will air during the off season. but definitely have more special episodes planned, of course, ramping up to the 2022-2023 season. So as always, for Justin Irwin, I'm Sam Olmstead. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time. Bye now.